Welcome to Module 2 of the Total Power Safety Leadership Program. In Module 1, we discussed your responsibilities as a supervisor and how leadership influences workplace safety. In this module, we're going to explore why those responsibilities exist. We'll discuss the legislation governing occupational health and safety across Canada and the United States, explain the legal responsibilities placed on supervisors, and review Total Power's incident reporting and investigation process. Understanding legislation isn't about memorizing sections of an act. It's about understanding the purpose behind the law. Every requirement exists because someone was seriously injured or killed. Learning from those events helps prevent them from happening again. As supervisors, understanding these legal requirements allows us to protect our employees, our customers, and ourselves. By the end of this module, you'll understand the legislation that applies to total power operations across Canada and the United States. You'll learn why incident reporting is essential, when incidents must be reported to regulatory agencies, and how supervisors contribute to incident investigations. We'll also discuss near misses, work refusals, occupational illnesses, and fatalities, along with the investigation process used throughout Total Power. Finally, we'll examine corrective and preventative actions and how continuous improvement strengthens our health and safety management system. Before discussing specific legislation, let's answer one important question. Why does legislation exist? Occupational health and safety legislation exists for one reason: to protect people. Nearly every requirement found within occupational health and safety legislation was created because someone was injured or worse. Throughout history, investigations have identified failures in training, supervision, equipment, procedures, and hazard recognition. Rather than allowing those incidents to repeat themselves, governments introduced legislation establishing minimum safety requirements for employers, supervisors, and workers. These laws define responsibilities. They establish expectations. Most importantly, they help ensure everyone returns home safely. At Total Power, our health and safety standards don't replace legislation. They build upon it by establishing expectations that often exceed minimum legal requirements. Total Power operates across multiple Canadian provinces and several U.S. states. That means we don't work under one single health and safety law. Instead, we must comply with the legislation applicable to the jurisdiction where the work is performed. In Canada, each province has its own occupational health and safety legislation. British Columbia follows WorkSafe BC requirements. Alberta follows Alberta Occupational Health and Safety legislation. Ontario follows the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Other provinces have similar legislation with their own specific requirements. For operations in the United States, supervisors must also understand the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, commonly known as OSHA. Although specific requirements vary, the principles remain remarkably consistent. Identify hazards. Control risks. Train employees. Investigate incidents. And protect workers. Although legislation differs from province to province, supervisors should understand which requirements apply before work begins. Regardless of the province or state in which you work, supervisors share similar legal responsibilities. You must ensure employees understand the hazards associated with their work. You must provide instruction and supervision appropriate to the task. You must ensure workers follow safe work procedures. You must correct unsafe acts and unsafe conditions whenever they're identified. You must investigate incidents and ensure corrective actions are implemented. Perhaps most importantly, supervisors must take every reasonable precaution to protect workers. This concept, known as due diligence, which was addressed in Module 1, will be discussed in greater detail later in this module. Remember, being promoted to supervisor isn't simply a change in title. It comes with legal responsibilities. Understanding those responsibilities protects your employees, supports Total Power's health and safety management system, and demonstrates your commitment to leadership. One of the most significant pieces of occupational health and safety legislation in Canada is Bill C-45, commonly known as the Westray Law. The law was introduced following the 1992 Westray mine disaster in Nova Scotia, where 26 miners lost their lives. Investigators found that warning signs had been ignored, unsafe conditions were accepted, and production had taken priority over worker safety. As a result, Parliament amended the Criminal Code of Canada, establishing criminal liability for organizations and individuals who direct the work of others. Today, every Total Power supervisor has a legal duty to take reasonable steps to protect workers and others who may be affected by the work. Safety is more than a company expectation, it's a legal responsibility. So, what does taking reasonable steps actually mean? Let's look at due diligence. You've probably heard the term due diligence, but what does it really mean? Due diligence means taking every reasonable precaution to protect workers. It doesn't mean eliminating every risk, it means identifying hazards, assessing them, implementing effective controls, and ensuring employees understand and follow safe work practices. Supervisors demonstrate due diligence every day by conducting inspections, reviewing field-level hazard assessments, coaching employees, correcting hazards, and documenting their actions. Remember, if it isn't documented, it's difficult to demonstrate that it happened. Good documentation protects both your employees and you as a supervisor. Let's see what due diligence looks like during a normal workday. Due diligence isn't a single action, it's a process that happens before, during, and after every job. Before work begins, supervisors plan the work, review the hazards, complete a field-level hazard assessment, and ensure employees have the right training, tools, and PPE. During the work, they monitor conditions, coach employees, and correct hazards as they arise. When the work is complete, they document inspections, corrective actions, and any lessons learned. Most workplace incidents don't result from one major mistake. They occur when small hazards are ignored or unsafe decisions go uncorrected. Every good decision you make today helps prevent tomorrow's incident. Now that we understand how due diligence prevents incidents, let's look at the legal responsibilities every supervisor has when directing the work of others. Regardless of where you work in Canada or the United States, supervisors share common legal responsibilities. You must identify and communicate hazards, ensure workers are trained and competent, enforce safe work procedures, correct unsafe conditions, and take every reasonable precaution to protect your team. These aren't just company expectations, they're legal responsibilities. Every inspection, every coaching conversation, and every hazard you correct demonstrates leadership and due diligence. Now that we've discussed your legal responsibilities, let's explore what happens when an incident occurs and how Total Power's incident reporting and investigation process helps us learn, improve, and prevent future incidents. At Total Power, every incident matters. Whether it's a minor first aid injury, damaged equipment, a near miss, or a serious workplace incident, every event provides an opportunity to learn and improve. One of the most important responsibilities of a supervisor is ensuring incidents are reported immediately. Delays in reporting can result in lost evidence, missed hazards, delayed medical treatment, and regulatory noncompliance. When an incident occurs, your first priority is always protecting people. Ensure injured workers receive appropriate medical attention. Secure the work area if necessary. Then begin the reporting process. All incidents are documented using the appropriate forms within DATS. Accurate reporting allows Total Power to identify trends, develop corrective actions, and continually improve our health and safety management system. Remember, we don't report incidents to assign blame. We report them to prevent them from happening again. Some of the most valuable reports you'll ever receive are near misses. A near miss is an unplanned event that could have caused injury, illness, property damage, or environmental harm, but fortunately did not. Perhaps a technician discovered a damaged lifting sling before using it. Perhaps a ladder slipped, but no one fell. Perhaps a vehicle narrowly avoided a collision. These are gifts. They allow us to identify hazards before someone gets hurt. At Total Power, near misses are reported just like incidents. The area is made safe. The event is documented in DATS. An investigation identifies root causes and corrective actions. Lessons learned are then communicated throughout the organization. Great supervisors encourage near-miss reporting because they understand prevention is always better than investigation. Let's look at a real near-miss experienced by a total power crew. A supervisor and 2 generator technicians were scheduled to perform an after-hours load bank test on a 600-volt, 450-kilowatt generator. Following Total Power's safe job procedure, the crew positioned the load banks and cables, isolated the generator, completed a live verification, and confirmed the absence of voltage before beginning work. As the final load side conductor was removed from the generator breaker, the crew noticed something unexpected. One conductor had melted insulation. The conductor showed evidence of overheating. Burn marks were also visible inside the breaker enclosure along with damaged insulating material, indicating a possible previous arc flash event. At this point, what would you do as the supervisor? The supervisor made the correct decision. Rather than continuing with the load bank test, the work was immediately stopped. Because the cause of the damage was unknown, the crew could not verify the integrity of the generator breaker or determine whether additional hazards existed. The damaged section of conductor was removed. The insulation was stripped back. All conductors were properly resecured. The generator was started in manual mode and operated without load. Temperature readings on all phases were monitored and found to be consistent, indicating no immediate thermal imbalance. The generator was then safely returned to service. Although the immediate hazard had been addressed, the near-miss investigation was only beginning. The investigation could not confirm the exact cause of the failure, but the most likely contributing factor was that the conductors had not been properly insulated or secured following a previous load bank test. Several important lessons were identified. Always inspect electrical connections during installation and removal, photograph unusual conditions before disturbing the scene, and stop work whenever equipment integrity cannot be verified. The investigation also recommended that the breaker undergo diagnostic testing by a qualified electrical contractor. Although no one was injured, this near-miss demonstrates why reporting and investigating these events is critical. Identifying hidden hazards today can prevent a much more serious incident in the future. One of the fundamental rights of every worker is the right to refuse unsafe work. If an employee believes a task presents a danger to themselves or another person, they have both the right and the responsibility to stop and report the concern. As a supervisor, your response sets the tone. Never dismiss a work refusal. Listen carefully. Ask questions. Assess the hazard objectively. If necessary, involve the corporate health and safety department. Other employees performing similar work must also be informed of the hazard while it is being assessed. Once appropriate controls have been implemented, communicate the outcome to everyone involved and document the entire process in DATS. Employees should never fear discipline or retaliation for raising genuine safety concerns. Encouraging open communication is one of the strongest indicators of a positive safety culture. Let's look at what this process looks like during a typical Total Power service call. Imagine one of your technicians calls you from a customer site. They have completed a field-level hazard assessment and determined the work cannot be performed safely. The generator is located inside an enclosed room with poor ventilation. Before entering, the technician observes heavy mouse droppings, dead mice, and signs of biological contamination throughout the area. The technician refuses to enter the room and stops the work. What do? Would you tell the technician to put on gloves and continue? Would you send another technician? Or would you support the refusal and reassess the hazards? Take a few moments to think about your answer. The correct response is to support the employee, stop the work, and investigate the hazard. The area should not be entered until the biological contamination has been assessed and proper controls are in place. This may include customer notification, professional cleaning, improved ventilation, appropriate PPE, and confirmation that the area is safe to enter. This is exactly how Total Power expects supervisors to respond. A work refusal is not a problem to work around. It is a warning that a hazard may not be adequately controlled. Once immediate safety has been addressed, the next step is ensuring the event is properly documented and investigated. Every incident, every near miss, and every work refusal provides an opportunity to improve. As supervisors, your responsibility extends beyond responding to the immediate event. You must ensure incidents are reported promptly, investigations are initiated, corrective actions are implemented, and lessons learned are communicated to others. The objective is never to assign blame. The objective is to understand what happened, why it happened, and what we can do differently to prevent it from happening again. This commitment to learning and continuous improvement is one of the foundations of Total Power's health and safety management system. Now that we've covered reporting requirements, let's walk through the Total Power incident investigation process, from securing the scene to identifying root causes, implementing corrective actions, and verifying their effectiveness. Let's walk through an actual incident that occurred during load bank testing. A supervisor and generator technician were performing a scheduled 2-hour load bank test on a generator. Approximately 1 hour into the test, the crew noticed something unusual. The generator began laboring. Black smoke was observed coming from the exhaust. Almost immediately afterward, the crew detected the smell of burning electrical components. These abnormal operating conditions indicated something was seriously wrong. Instead of continuing the test, the crew immediately removed the electrical load and shut the generator down. Their situational awareness prevented the incident from becoming significantly more serious. Now let's examine what they discovered. After shutting down the generator, the crew began assessing the situation. They followed Total Power's incident response process. The area was immediately secured. No additional work was permitted. The unusual smell directed attention toward the generator breaker. Inspection revealed that the generator breaker had experienced an internal electrical failure. An arc flash had occurred inside the breaker enclosure. Fortunately, the arc flash blanket had been installed correctly before testing began. The blanket successfully contained the small arc flash event. No one was injured. Only the breaker sustained damage. This demonstrates why established procedures exist. The controls worked exactly as intended. The next step was determining why the breaker failed. Investigators determined the breaker experienced an internal electrical short while operating under sustained load. The failure was not caused by technician error. Instead, the breaker likely contained degraded internal components that could not be identified through normal visual inspections. During approximately 1 hour of high-current load bank testing, thermal stress increased inside the breaker. Eventually, an internal dielectric failure occurred. That failure produced an arc fault inside the breaker housing. The generator attempted to compensate for the fault by producing additional power. This caused the engine to labor and produce black exhaust smoke. These symptoms became the first indication something had gone wrong. Let's examine the contributing factors. Investigators also identified several contributing factors. The breaker had likely experienced years of service. Internal contacts and insulation systems degrade over time. Unfortunately, that degradation cannot be confirmed through routine visual inspections. Investigators also noted there was no predictive diagnostic testing completed before extended full load testing. Tests such as insulation resistance measurements and contact resistance testing may have identified deterioration before the event occurred. Another contributing factor was the sustained electrical loading associated with a 2-hour load bank test. Although the breaker was designed for these conditions, prolonged thermal loading accelerated the failure of an already weakened component. Most importantly, no evidence suggested the crew caused the failure. The investigation demonstrated the value of looking beyond immediate causes to identify weaknesses within equipment management systems. Finally, let's look at what prevented this from becoming a serious injury. Although equipment damage occurred, several positive controls prevented this event from becoming a serious injury. The arc flash blanket contained the arc flash inside the breaker enclosure. The technicians immediately recognized abnormal operating conditions. They removed the electrical load without hesitation. The generator was shut down quickly. The area was secured. The incident was reported. An investigation is not complete when the report is written. It is complete when the hazard has been corrected. Corrective actions are the improvements we make to prevent similar incidents from occurring again. Sometimes the solution is simple. A damaged extension cord is removed from service. A missing guard is replaced. A housekeeping issue is corrected. Other times the solution is more complex. Perhaps procedures require revision. Training needs improvement. Additional equipment is required. Engineering controls need to be installed. Every corrective action should be assigned to a responsible person, given a completion date, tracked, and verified. Verification is critical. Supervisors must confirm that the action actually solved the problem. Otherwise, the hazard may still exist. Some incidents require more than an internal investigation. They may also require regulatory reporting. Some incidents trigger reporting requirements under provincial or state legislation. Examples include fatalities, critical injuries, dangerous occurrences, occupational illnesses, and other reportable events defined by legislation. As a supervisor, you are not expected to determine whether an incident is legally reportable on your own. Your responsibility is to notify senior management and the corporate health and safety department immediately. From there, Total Power will determine the appropriate regulatory reporting requirements for the jurisdiction where the incident occurred. Prompt communication is essential. Delays can affect investigations, evidence collection, and legal compliance. When in doubt, report it. Corporate health and safety will determine the next steps. Good reporting also depends on good documentation. Documentation is one of the strongest demonstrations of due diligence. Every incident should be supported by accurate, complete, and objective records. This includes incident reports, witness statements, photographs, investigation findings, corrective actions, and communications with regulatory agencies when applicable. At Total Power, these records are maintained within DATS and other approved corporate systems. Good documentation serves several purposes. It demonstrates compliance. It supports future investigations. It identifies trends. Most importantly, it allows us to learn from previous incidents. Remember, if an incident cannot be reconstructed from the documentation, the investigation is incomplete. Congratulations on completing Module 2. Throughout this module, we've explored the legislation that governs occupational health and safety, your responsibilities as a supervisor, and Total Power's approach to incident reporting and investigation. You learned that incidents, near misses, and work refusals are opportunities to improve our systems. You saw how due diligence, corrective actions, and continuous improvement work together to strengthen our health and safety management system. Most importantly, you've seen that investigations are about learning, not assigning blame. Every supervisor has the opportunity to influence the safety culture of our organization by responding to incidents professionally, objectively, and consistently. Let's confirm your understanding with a short knowledge assessment. Before continuing to Module 3, you'll complete a short assessment covering the concepts discussed in this module. The quiz consists of 10 multiple-choice questions. A passing score of 80% is required before moving forward. If you do not achieve a passing score on your first attempt, review the material and try again. The goal is not simply to pass the assessment. The goal is to ensure you understand how legislation, due diligence, incident reporting, investigations, and corrective actions work together to protect our employees and strengthen Total Power's health and safety management system. Once you've successfully completed the assessment, we'll move into Module 3, where we'll explore Total Power's health and safety standards, how they are applied in the field, and the supervisor's role in ensuring they are consistently implemented.